sins of the flesh. Why do conservative Christians, especially Roman Catholics, focus so much on sex, and in particular on sexual impurity and sins of the flesh, and understand sex to be a primary arena in which sin is thought to abound? The Bible does not have such a focus. The Old Testament is keen on various aspects of ritual impurity and on rules about who may marry, not have coitus with, whom. But the idea that sexual pleasure is a particular source of sin is entirely absent. There is no explicit condemnation of masturbation, coitus outside of marriage, or prostitution, and the rectitude of polygamy is taken for granted. In particular, the 6th and 9th commandments are narrowly focused on adultery and are arguably motivated by a concern to defend a man's property rights over his wife or wives. Jesus has little to add on the matter, apart from asserting that infringement of the 9th commandment is of equal seriousness to an infringement of the 6th. He is also keen to outlaw divorce, at least as it existed in Roman times, but this has no direct bearing on sexual misbehaviour as such. Moreover, his empathic responses to a woman caught in adultery and to a notorious prostitute seem remarkably indulgent. The apostles only treat sexual misbehaviour as one dimension of immorality among many, and the main thing that is denounced is prostitution. Remarkably, not even pederasty is mentioned. Whereas the fact that the Apostle Paul writes, "It is better to marry than to burn," would seem to imply that he thought the only righteous context for heterosexual coitus was within marriage, he does not explicitly state this, and he certainly does not state his reasons for any such belief. I have argued elsewhere at length that the obsession with sexual purity arises from the dissatisfaction which many human beings have with being human. Many human beings do not like to admit that they are animals, and so therefore of necessity have basic needs and instincts as being animals. Moreover, there is a widespread, supposedly spiritual but more plausibly Stoic or Gnostic narrative that human beings should, for some obscure reason, aspire to be angelic, spiritual, or heavenly, that they should seek to exceed what is natural, in Greek parophysin, rather than animal, corporeal, and earthly, that they should seek to fulfill what is natural, in Greek kataphysin. The animal body, the flesh, is understood to be an encumbrance, and to be a nexus of temptation and depravity. Hence it must be beaten down, and its wants denied as much as is compatible with remaining alive. Asceticism too easily degenerates into this malign ethos. This perverse human animosity towards being human comes to a head in matters sexual, which generally cannot be disguised as being anything other than what they are, an expression of animalistic exigency. There's a further dimension to the question at hand, namely, what is the personal motivation which drives some people to pontificate about sexual misbehaviour? It seems to me that some do so because they find their personal struggle against their libido to be particularly onerous, and wish to force this arguably misdirected and futile struggle upon others so that they themselves do not feel isolated and alone in their self-inflicted torment and misery, according to the adage, misery loves company. Others may do so for precisely the opposite reason. The fact that they find it easy to repress their libidinous tendencies gives them a comfortable sense of self-righteousness and superiority over others, seen as less spiritual and more fleshly, and they take pleasure in implicitly setting forth their own supposed virtue by condemning what they personally find easy to avoid in those whom they understand to be depraved.